This is a podcast by the News Minute, and you are listening to South Central.
Hello and welcome to South Central, a TNM podcast where we put the South at the center. I am Dhanya Rajendran, your host, and joining me as usual from the studio is my co-host and the reporting chief of the News Minute, Pooja Prasanna.
Hi Dhanya, hope to not be confined to studios for long. Election season coming up.
Yeah, you have to travel to Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Yep.
Being almost of retirement age, I think this year I will sit out the elections a bit.
I agree.
Okay, so before we go to the headlines, I want to remind you all, remember South Central drops every Friday. We discuss headlines from South India and then we deep dive into two topics. I got a very curious letter this week from someone who said that we are not mean enough, that we are not asking subscriptions in a mean and convincing way. You know, every week I tell you all that subscription per month is just 500 rupees. It's equal to one journey to a Starbucks or a coffee day or whatever. So if you believe in democratic institutions that journalism must do things to protect, then become a subscriber. But how can we be mean?
And we can be mean by calling people who don't subscribe shameless.
Yeah, I mean, you're just watching and listening us without paying even one
for free, and then you go and whine about how journalism is dying in India. So stop being shameless, become a subscriber.
Is that good enough? Because that subscriber told us, learn from Abhinandan Sekhri. So if you think we are not mean enough, please go listen to Abhinandan. He's really mean and he convinces people to actually take subscription. But you know, apart from the jokes, there was a list put out this week which had all the publications in the world which have more than 1 million paying subscribers. 1 million. There was only one Indian publication, which is LiveMin, but that too because they have tie-up with an international organization, I think. And I was wondering, 1 million seems so far away. For people here to touch 10,000, then touch 50,000, or 1 lakh seems so far away. That is for independent media organizations. In your mind, don't assume that thousands and lakhs of people are taking subscription. They are not. So we are asking you again, do it. Okay, headlines, Pooja.
Let's start with Kerala this week. Kerala Assembly Elections 2026 update. We will be bringing lots of news from the ground as well. CPM expels senior leader TK Govindan. He has denied allegations that the party has denied allegations that he'd raised. He's a CPIM leader and the district secretariat member, TK Govindan, and he'd broken ranks with the party, resigning from his position and announcing his decision to contest as an independent against party candidate PK Shamala.
So this has become a huge controversy. PK Shamala is also the wife of MV Govindan, the state secretary. So because Govind, and all of them are called as Govindan Marsh, because he's not standing for elections, PK Shamala is. Now the whole question is, why has she been given a ticket? She has her own merit. She has been a student leader. She's been part of the party. But the rebels are saying that no, why was she given the ticket? No one else given a chance. MV Govindan, of course, has denied all these allegations, but it is playing out badly for the CPIM because all these controversies are coming from Kannur, which is the bastion of the CPIM. And from there, we are seeing 2 or 3 people moving away from the party and also questioning the party's stances quite openly.
That's where even the chief minister is from. And many of these people have also spoken up against Pinarayi Vijayan's leadership. So that's also not great news for them.
It's trouble for the Congress also. We are recording this on Wednesday, so a lot of things can change by the time this airs on Friday. But the point is the Congress also is going through a lot of trouble. They have not been able to put out their full list. Only around 50 to 56 were announced. The CPIM announced their list the moment the Election Commission announced elections. Congress is facing a lot of trouble. And I think there have been mass resignations in Alapura. There are people who are going to leave the party and stand as rebel candidates. Usual election stuff.
Yeah, but do read this week's Power Trip because we tell you what are the main problems Congress is facing, how they're trying to navigate all that. Of course, you have to become a subscriber for that or you can't access. In a first, IUML fields 2 women candidates for Kerala Assembly polls. It just makes me feel so sad to even say this. Jayanti Rajan has been nominated as the first non-Muslim woman candidate to be fielded from IUML.
So the Muslim League's first candidate in the last 25 years. So there was one woman candidate in 1996, Kamarunisa. After that, in 2021, there was Nurbina Rashid. And this year, they have 2 candidates. I mean, imagine we are talking about 2 as a major victory.
Yeah. Moving on to Tamil Nadu, I want Nayanthara. AIDMK MP's crass remark at women's safety rally sparks row. The irony couldn't be more clear. He was talking about what the chief minister can give, and DMK saying that whatever you want, we promise to give you all that, and this is what he thought to be appropriate.
So the CV Shanmugam has made a similar comment last year also when he said that, oh, will you give me free wives then? He has been condemned quite a bit by everybody. The other thing is, we were actually thinking whether we should have a sexism tracker this election. We were holding back. We made the entire template. We were holding back because we were not sure whether we can then keep up with the flow of comments which will come in. And then we had a whole discussion in the newsroom. Who do we track? Do we track from district secretaries onwards only? Because everybody we can't put in the tracker, right? But do you think we should have a sexism tracker? Do write to us at southcentral@thenewsminute.com. Basically, we will put all the comments that we can during campaign speeches of people being sexist and misogynist. That's the idea.
Yeah, but I just want to add, when you look at this video, like many other such videos, the people around these people start laughing. So they basically play to the gallery. I think it's high time people around also start calling them out so that they realize then and there. Another Tamil Nadu headline, Lima Rose is AIDMK's top pick to counter the DMK in Trichy. Danya, a little bit of context on this?
Yeah, so Lima Rose's full name is Lima Rose Martin. She's a wife of Santiago Martin, the lottery king. So look at how well spread they are. Lima Rose may contest from the AIDMK. Her son, Jose Charles Martin, recently started a political party. It was called Lachiya Jananayaga Katchi, and we had reported that he may be contesting from Puducherry. And the son-in-law, Adav Arjuna, is a part of the Tamilaga Vettri Kazhagam, which is Vijay's party. And Santiago Martin, as you know, was one of the top electoral bond money givers as much as MEIL.
Yeah,
He
with
given to-
network everywhere from West
he had
Bengal
given-
to Andhra.
Yeah, TMC, YSRCP and DMK were the largest recipients
But he's
of
also
money.
given to BJP.
Lesser,
Yeah.
BJP and the Congress also, but
Yeah.
lesser than the regional parties. So this is a rich family which has spread itself out, I feel.
Yeah. Moving on to Karnataka, SWR puts off exams after high voltage protests against Kannada exclusion. The agitation directed at the conduct of the Limited Departmental Competitive Examination, that's LDCE, eventually forced the authorities to postpone the exam indefinitely. Vacant treasury benches, Basavaraj Horatti adjourns Karnataka Legislative Council session. When the session reconvened for a second half of the day around 3:15, and MLC A.H. Vishwanath was about to speak, Horatti was disappointed that only one minister, that is Madhu Bangarappa, who's the Minister for Education, was present. This is a problem time and again.
No, but I think last week, Khadar, the speaker, was
Yeah,
upset that
yeah.
ministers are not giving replies
Reply.
to questions.
Yeah.
So the Congress is performing poorly in the Legislative Council and in the Assembly.
Yeah.
And the speakers are really upset with the Congress.
Yeah, and let's remind people, they get paid to attend these sessions. Usually in Belagavi session, which is usually the winter session of Karnataka, we've seen dismal performances. People like 20 to 25% people attend. The rest of them just think it's a holiday. But now it's happening even in the Bengaluru sessions. Moving on to Telangana, the Telangana police constitute a 9-member SIT to probe the Moinabad drug case, the drug arms case. The case stems from a late-night raid on March 14th at a farmhouse in Moinabad belonging to BRS leader and former MLA pilot Rohit Reddy, where officials reportedly recovered 2 grams of cocaine. It's just wonderful. And those detained, this is the rogues gallery list. Putta Mahesh Kumar, MP from Eluru representing TDP, pilot Rohit Reddy, who's a former MLA and a BRS leader, Moragenani Ramesh, who's a real estate businessman from Manikonda, and V. Shravan Kumar, who's also a real estate
So
businessman.
look at the combination. TDP, BRS, real estate people using drugs, arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there they don't
Allegedly.
have problem with any party issues and all. Next is Andhra Pradesh. Each state should implement UCC on their own, says Andhra 20-point program chairman Dinakar. If you're wondering what is this 20-point program, there's something called Suvarna Andhra 2047, like Viksit Bharat 2047. And as part of that, the Chief Minister has constituted a committee. Lanka Dinakar is the chairperson of that committee. They had gone to a study tour to Uttarakhand recently. And what did they do? They studied the Uniform Civil Code, and he came
Also.
back. Also, amongst other things, he says that all the southern states should implement their own version. Now, he also somehow determined that whatever concerns were expressed before UCC was brought in Uttarakhand, there was no evidence of any of that. The best part is this is a committee to look at law and order, bettering law and order. The states they're visiting: Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Also, they'll be going to Uttar Pradesh apparently.
All the best to the people of Andhra
Yeah.
Pradesh.
Yes. TDP issues notice to Andhra MP caught allegedly using drugs at Hyderabad farmhouse. This is in continuation to what we read earlier. Let's look at one national headline this week. Domestic LPG production is up by 38%, informs the union government. Domestic production now estimated at more than 48,000 tons on a day-to-day basis. This increase follows in issuance of supply maintenance orders. If you want to understand why this is coming, watch last week's South Central. We discussed at length how India has been heavily reliant on import of LPG and how that's a problem now.
So government is saying production is up by 38%.
Yeah.
Let's see how things pan out, because the war is showing no signs of abating. In fact, things are becoming worse. So yeah, that's it with the headlines. Thank you, Pooja. Okay, so we'll move to our first discussion of the day. We are seeing protests across the country against the Transgender Persons Amendment Bill, which was introduced in the Lok Sabha on the 13th of March. So we'll directly jump into the discussion because we have got two guests in the studio. Arvind Naren. Arvind is the founder of the Alternate Law Forum in Bengaluru. He was part of the team of lawyers who challenged Section 377 of the IPC. He was part of the challenge right from the High Court in 2009 to the Supreme Court in 2018. Welcome, Arvind, to South Central. And joining Arvind is Rumi Harish. Rumi Harish is a musician, a queer, trans, masculine and social justice activist based in Bengaluru, and also a consultant with the Alternate Law Forum. So this is like a surrogate ad for ALF. Everybody come and work at ALF. Yeah. So Arvind, quickly, the protests are happening across the country, but I think a lot of people are also a little confused as to what is the problem, right? Because the government is presenting this amendment as protecting rights. Tell us, what are the problems with the amendment?
Right. You have to begin from 2014 when the Supreme Court passed the judgment Nalsa versus Union of India. And the judgment recognized the right of the transgender community to self-identification. So, for example, when you say the Indian Constitution has the right to freedom of speech and expression, they read the right to expression as including the right to express one's gender. And of course, the understanding is that expressing one's gender is a part of the freedom of expression. It's also closely connected to dignity and selfhood and autonomy. That's the framework which we had. Following that judgment, we had the introduction of a bill, Private Members Bill by Tiruchi Shiva, on the protection of transgender persons' rights, which is a very expansive bill, which unfortunately didn't get passed. Finally, what got passed is 2018 law, which is the Protection of Transgender Persons' Rights Act. And while at that time, there was a lot of opposition from the community to the bill because it did not fully capture the right to self-determination of gender identity. It did not fully capture that particular right. But what it did is encompass the idea of a transgender as a very broad identity. It included traditional identities like Jogta, Kinnar, Hijra, and Aravani. It also included trans man, trans woman, and included the intersex community as well. So very expansive understanding and a definition. So what this 2026 amendment does is narrows the definition down. It says transgender today means only traditional social identities such as Hijra, Aravani, Kinnar, and Jogta. And they specifically say it does not include trans man and trans woman. So if what we see as the diversity of the transgender community is sought to be narrowed down, put within this frame of being a traditional identity. That's the fundamental problem. Because if you say rights flow from the law, and you're defining the beneficiaries so very narrowly, then it's a huge problem. As my friend Rumi often makes the point, that if you look at the trans male community, they don't have a traditional identity. the trans women identity, trans women have some traditional identities. So the trans male community falls entirely outside the law. Again, the point is this, right? You recognize rights for a certain period of time, since 2014 onwards. Now we're taking those rights back. And rights once granted or recognized should not be allowed to be taken back. That's the fundamental problem we have. Again, think of it as younger people coming to the fore. Suddenly you're told that you're not a transgender person anymore because the law doesn't recognize you, because the only transgender people are traditional conventional identities. Again, there's two more problems I have, but do you want me to go into that, or do we?
No, I want to ask first, I know you want to talk about the self-identification process itself. Rumi, I want to ask you, from what Arvind was saying, that the rights were given and then they're being taken away. Basically, they're trying to erase a lot of people, right? But how did self-identification work in the last few years?
See, we have a constitution which actually supports self-identification either way. But it was officially recognized through the NALSA judgment. And we needed that kind of a official recognition. Until then, we used to have a lot. So the thing is, it was very interesting that while we were talking about the rights of transgenders, we were also evolving the rights of transgenders in terms of creatively thinking how it has to be like any other people's rights. And so when the NALSA judgment came and the Trans Act came, we actually, with experience and research and things like this, especially the work on ground, we had gone quite far. Even certain things that the court could not think or the other people could not imagine. Like in 2009, I remember clearly from ALF, two very important people, Gautam and Ranganathan and Sunil Mohan, drafted the first name and gender change procedure, the process and everything, which started off like that it could be done in this manner. So this is like as abysmally going back. A lot of research gone like lost types.
Arvind, if I could focus on the self-identification part of it. Again, we're going to talk about gays in our next conversation, but here the gays is medical, biological, legal, rather than how one views themselves. How would that work, and why is that so problematic?
Because the amendment lays down certain rules in which the self-identification has to happen.
Yeah.
Identification, no longer self, has to happen.
Yeah, one point to clarify before that is the range of protections what I've indicated is already narrowed down. So the only people who are entitled to protection under this law are the 4 traditional identities, as well as the intersex, people who identify as intersex, as well as those who are coerced or forced into being transgender. These are the 3 categories which are there. Referring to the point of self-identification, you note that it only applies to these groupings. It does not apply to trans man, trans woman who are outside the framework. So the only people we're referring to in terms of self-identification, Hijra, Kinnar, Jokta and Aravani.
No, so you're saying even those slabs of, go to the doctor, go to this, that also will apply only to the social cultural identities.
Yeah. That is the very, very important point to note. So again, when the argument is made that it's for these communities, I'm like, no, it's against these communities. These communities, if you're saying they're traditional communities, why on earth do they need to get a certificate from a doctor saying that they've gone through a surgical intervention, etc., etc. As community members will share, not all traditional identities go through a surgical intervention. And again, the language is really offensive. Language is not surgical intervention. I'm putting it. They're saying amputation. They're saying mutilation. They're saying eunuch. This is language which the act is actually utilizing. So again, going back to the point, these traditional, firstly, the transgender community from this broad spectrum is narrowed down. It includes intersex, it includes the 4 traditional identities, it includes those who are coerced into being transgender. These are the 3 groupings involved. Among these 3 groupings, now we are saying, if you say, I want now a certificate as a transgender person, you first go and get a certificate from this board. The board includes both medical officials as well as government officials. So you get a certificate whatever difficulty, you get a certificate from this board. Your job is not done. You got that certificate, you take that certificate and then go present it before the district magistrate. District magistrate now has the power. He can say, maybe I'll recognize it, maybe I won't. So there's two levels which apply to these traditional identities to get that certificate finally. So as far as the act does a service to nobody, to whom it does a greater disservice is the only question that really debate.
No, so let's say somebody from a traditional community, they will also get the certificate only if they have gone through a medical procedure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the important point to recognize.
The government in the bill, the stated intent, as it has been reported, is they've said that they're trying to protect us, those who are facing severe social exclusion due to biological reasons. So there is, of course, everybody, like you said, will be targeted in different ways, but does it also create an artificial hierarchy within the community? Biological reason, non-biological reason, like they're just trying to create these slabs.
See, the thing is, the government understanding of biological reason means that they think every transgender is because of a biological reason. They have collapsed the difference between transgender and the intersex. So that's where this whole word, the usage of the word ubhayalingi comes. What do you mean ubhayalingi? We can't live in two genders. We shift from one to another, or other to another, or you are somewhere in the journey. How do you so ubhayalingi is very clearly an intersex term. Why are you using the term intersex to every transgender? So that is where the idea comes from, and that is why the grouping is also thought of in that manner.
What the other problem is, of course, how it talks about coercion, right? It almost reminded me of the anti-conversion law, where anybody can oppose if somebody wants to convert, even if it's for marriage, a family member or anybody can come and oppose. Even here, they're saying that coercion, if somebody is coerced to become a trans person, which actually opens up the possibility of any person just coming and complaining, especially the biological family, saying that they're being coerced. One thing that we often deal with as journalists, the calls that I get the most are, like when young people have left their houses because they are in these relationships and the police are not helping them. That's when I normally get calls from some of the groups working with them saying that, can you call the police and talk to them, right? So it is the biological family which is against them. And the law is going to give them a weapon to complain against any of the others who help them, right?
It's also the myth, of it's perpetrating or it's like doing more of propaganda for the myth of like how it is understood that hijras kidnap people and castrate. It's just the same.
It's a great analogy. I hadn't thought of it quite that way, because you look at the language there. Here it's force, allurement, inducement, deceit, undue influence.
Same thing, same language.
This is the anti-conversion law uses. And during the debates in the anti-conversion law, we always ask the question, what do you mean by the question of inducement? If I promise you a place in heaven, is that inducement? Right? What is inducement? What is undue influence? Right? If somebody is an older person, somebody is a younger person, is that undue influence? Right? So all of these questions, as you put your finger on the point, right? That is the point. If you're a trans person and you want to go through a conversion, and you want to go through a transition, you want to go to a transition, and your parents oppose it, your parents now have a law which is going to help them to file a case or to against anybody who dares to help you go through this transition. So it's a great analogy. So I think you also got to the heart of it, because the heart of the law is a deep discomfort with the question of, again, the slogan of the trans movement, my body, my right. The idea that your body is your right, they have a great discomfort with. The point is, your body is a biological entity, you're born with it. What do you mean by my body, my right? You have no right to change it. You have no right to move from one position to the other. There's no question of choice. The moment choice comes in, rights goes out of the window. That's what this law in effect is telling you. If you are there in the traditional identity, then to an extent, again, as I described, to an extent, your rights will be recognized because we have pity for you. Once you start asserting the question of rights, once you say my body, as Rumi often tells me, my body, my right, come. you have no rights because it's undue influence.
Yeah. No, and also this, I think if you look at the amendment, no, if you, it also comes out very clearly that it is built upon a popular myth about the concept of transgenders rather than a well-researched academic paper or well-researched work or judgments or any such thing. It is built on popular myth. Otherwise, how will you have such words?
Just to, yeah. I want to supplement that point because it's a very important point Rumi is making. Because see, the question again, the questions you're asking is a fair question, right? I mean, this is what the government is saying. The government is saying it's meant to protect. Is that so? What Rumi's point is, where's your research? Where's your evidence? Where's your consultation? How do we know where this is coming from? You've given us no evidence that there's a misuse of the law. You've given us no evidence that the large majority of transgender people are those who are coerced into becoming transgender. That's your assumption, that's in your head, and you dare apply that on the entire community. So that's, I think, the core of the problem. The lack of transparency, lack of integrity, lack of any kind of honesty as far as the bill is concerned.
No, I have maintained this all the time, that this government is the biggest liar on record. When the digital media rules were brought in a few years ago, there were 2 or 3 union ministers who had a press conference, and they said the reason why digital media rules are being brought in is because there's a lot of child pornography and women being harassed and assaulted, and those visuals are being used everywhere. That's not the reason why they brought digital media rules. The veneer of protection is just a lie that they use to actually do something entirely different. They want to target a section of people. It was the digital media in that case. It is a trans people in this case. But I don't understand the politics. What is it? Are we going the MAGA way? Because this is something very out of the blue, right? This is not something too expected also.
But there's another thing from what you guys were talking about, how this resembles the anti-conversion law. It looks like, I mean, while we were wondering what could be the political motivation behind this even, it looks like on the surface just consolidation of power, right? Because your district administration now has the power over your life. Your medical superintendent, again belonging to the government, has more power. So anybody else has power over you except yourself. So it's in that same direction.
No, the earlier rules, Trans Act rules, had just created the same thing. Like the power was in the hands of district magistrate and the medical fraternity and all that. So even me to get my TG ID card, I had to go through this process. But now it is like directly in their hands.
And you've erased a lot of people from even getting that card.
My initial affidavit of saying I am this is gone. I'm not even saying that. There's no space for me to say that.
What could the political motivation be for this?
There's a certain, your point of consolidation, of a certain kind of identity, certain way of thinking seems to be at the heart of this. The government is deeply discomfortable or uncomfortable with the notion of rights. That's what we gather from this. They don't want to recognize the rights of particularly grouping seen as, within quotes, Western, within quotes, non-traditional. So they're okay with the transgender community to the extent that it has a traditional rooting. If you're outside tradition, you have no rights. If you draw your inspiration, as Rumi just indicated, from the Constitution, you have no rights. If you draw your inspiration from the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, you may have some rights.
Yeah. So what happens to everyone? Very technical question. This is still not it's not passed, but it will be because they have the brute numbers unless there is a large protest and, like the farmers' law, they had to go back on it. But let us say, God forbid, this does become the law. What happens to everybody who's gotten their identification till now?
That's the great question. That's the great question. Then I'll keep on.
None of us don't know because, I got into this surgery and transition very late in life at 47. After having worked for it 20 years, then I did my surgery. Within 5 years, it is changing. So it's like, it's really giving me the jitters in terms of what will happen to my identity, what will happen to my bank accounts, what will happen to my existence, what will happen to my voting powers, what will happen to my... So will all my civil rights be taken away? Will all my fundamental rights be taken away? What will happen? Fundamental rights might not be touched, right?
Still, technical way of answering this would be that this law, there is no retrospective application.
Doesn't have.
It doesn't state that that we will reopen the question of identities and identities or cards which have been granted in the past. It will apply from the date it comes into force, technically.
But I think some of the states will oppose, like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, who all have, much more progressive laws when it comes to this. I think they will also oppose, right, in court. But I was talking to someone yesterday from the community, and she was saying that she was sounding very dejected, obviously, and she was saying that I don't know if there will be any relief from the court, because if you go back to the Nalsa judgment, the court did give the government power to come up with the law, right? So the court can say that this is.
The clarification is the court laid down certain fundamental principles.
So you're saying there is hope.
Yeah, of course. The principles are very clear. The right to self-recognition of gender identity is the principle. The problem we had with the 2019 Act is been fully recognized that principle. And the problem we'll have with this amendment is does away the principle completely. Not only do you have the Nalsa judgment of 2014, you have the Jane Kaushik judgment of 2025 by Justice Padriwala, which again recognizes the rights of the transgender community. So there's a strong strand in the Supreme Court jurisprudence, which is recognizing the rights of transgender community. And there's no doubt that this completely takes away the rights which have been recognized till now. So I would think that, if it goes to court, then there is an obligation that the court has to look at this particular law in the light of its own jurisprudence and say that does this or does this not violate the rights of all persons to express the gender of their choice.
No, I think the government has played it very well, right? Keeping I'm just thinking politically. Let's say the BJP supporters themselves at some point feel that this law should not have come. They are being told that, look, we are not touching the traditional communities. So if you look at what will a person say? Oh, but they are there in Ramayana, they are there in Mahabharata. Why are we taking away their rights? Ramayana, Mahabharata people are still covered by the law. It's for the others, right? That's why I said, are we going to inspiration from America, perhaps, where we are also seeing the same thing happening, right? Same thing playing out.
But if you actually look at Ramayana Mahabharata a little more closely, there is a lot of self-identification there too. So if people do, I am just saying for the sake of argument. But I really can't make out what the motivation was, like we're saying, because I understand they have these mega projects that they want to finish, the Hindu Rashtra projects and all of that, and most of the things fall in that ambit. This, I don't know where, except for the fact that they don't like individual rights. That is the only thing I can see.
No, I think there is one more thing. So a lot of people had started using this term called third gender. They were very fine with two genders. They didn't want to see any other genders apart from two. When suddenly the question of transgenders came, they immediately grouped us all together as third gender. And when we did not come together as third gender and said we are multiple genders, that's when that whole system got toppled. They didn't know how to deal with it. And one of the main reasons, and that is all in the name of sanskar, in the name of, again, this whole very, very being dharmic and all that. So if you are not fitting into their boxes, then you have to be eliminated. No. So now they have very clearly built a third box. Only a few, they will decide who will get into that box.
Conformity.
Yeah. Earlier they said, we'll build third box for you. When we said, no, there will be 10,000 boxes, multiple boxes, or no boxes at all. They couldn't take it. So now they are deciding who is going to be in the box. So it's a very clear strategy.
So I was reading an article in The Wire today. I don't know if you've seen it. It's about what has been happening in the national law colleges. Okay. So the article basically says that the premise of the law, the new law that they were trying to bring, is by saying that the previous law had become unenforceable because self-identification was itself a problem. So because that law became unenforceable, people who needed protection were not getting it. Therefore, we are sort of funneling down the law to just a few people.
So again, if you go to the national law schools or the institutions of higher education, a large number of the transgender community folks who would identify as trans man, trans woman, gender fluid, a range of these more what would be called, I think, modern identities. Very few or very rarely your traditional identities who are there in institutions of higher education. So the only question we're discussing is how do you ensure the protection of the rights of these these groupings or these individuals from discrimination? Are they not entitled to protection as well from discrimination? And the law should recognize the right to protection from discrimination, which is what the current 2019 law does. So now we are saying all of these people who are now in colleges are entitled to no protection anymore.
And also, when they don't know something that does not exist. Like, for example, they have no sense of the existence of trans men. So they don't exist. What do you mean trans men? Whenever I go to the police stations, half the times, not half the time, almost every time I have to keep explaining what a trans man is. And they will ask, really? Women also become men? This kind of stupidity is what you have to keep addressing. And obviously, this kind of rules will come out of that kind of stupidity only. What else do you expect? Because if you look at the kind of wordings, what is the other one? They don't allow for the words like freedom, choice, or any such thing. And adopt outwardly present transgender identity by mutilation, emasculation, castration, amputation, surgical, chemical. What do you mean chemical? Hormonal procedure. ಏನಿದ್ರ ಅರ್ಥ ಈಗ ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲ we're also doing hormonal procedures, right?
What is chemical procedure?
I don't think they understand the difference between chemicals and hormones, so they probably.
Yeah, so
Can I just add everything in case it is somewhere there?
so if you look at the way it is done, it is like, again I'm saying, no research, no study, no understanding. Even and it was the MSJE who sent people for studying about transgenders. Now MSJE comes up with this. I'm surprised how those two documents don't link in their heads.
How shocked is the community now, and is there hope that we can fight this legally?
First thing is, we have to figure out how many community people actually know it. It's the ones who have, easy access to information are knowing it. We are really finding it very difficult to take this across to all the communities. A lot of people don't even know something like this happened. So, some of us are like, very shocked, and some of us don't even know. It's like that.
Today, actually, I just came back from a protest at the town hall against a particular bill, and it's really fascinating. The range of communities represented. I could see from my own eyes the Hijra community members, the members of trans men, trans women, gender fluid people. The entire grouping was represented, both cutting across lines of class as well. So really fascinating to see that coalition of people really coming together. And again, for me, I felt the moment was something like 2014. 2013, when we had a reversal of the Delhi High Court judgment, which decriminalized Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. The same energy was there, as far as I could say, as far as people were concerned. So I think the momentum is really building up in terms of the fact that, this is unacceptable, that this kind of a bill which takes away rights is not something we're going to tolerate. And again, you see that energy coming from a range of sources.
But, Arvind, when you use the word energy also, I'm actually feeling, I feel dejected that this was not a complication we needed now.
No.
Like, we have so many other battles, and why?
You spoke about how farm laws were repealed. Many of us have reported on that the pressure came from external pressures, right, for the government to take such a drastic step, because this is a government that doesn't like admitting they were wrong or looking quote unquote weak. I wonder where the pressure for this will come from, because the way the world is going.
Yeah,
It has to be internal pressure. It has to be pressure which comes from the bottom up.
What can people do? I mean, other than spread information, what do you think? How can people
I
contribute?
think it's beginning, because the sense I got the energy from this, again, going back to my word energy, from the protest, is you begin by raising your voice against this bill. As many people as possible raising their voice against the bill, reaching out to our political parties. One of the demands which came up is we want the Congress party to take a position on this bill. We want all the opposition parties to take a position on this bill. We want to push the BJP as well, say you take a position on this bill as well. So we have to start that process of lobbying and mobilizing. Again, the reason why I think this community is different is because this community is used to this form of oppression. I mean, how
But
many
they
years
shouldn't
is Section
be, right?
377 be? You tell me how many years is 377 there? 1860,
Yeah.
2009, right? And at that time when we fought it, what did we say? We said this law will go, but maybe not in our lifetime. That's what we said.
Yeah.
It went in our lifetime. And so now we have to fight again.
No, but we are reintroducing a problem. That's what, I mean, there we were solving an issue, right?
Yeah, but he's saying it's a cycle. It'll go.
No,
it'll
I'm
come.
just tired of this freaking cycle.
So I'm saying that we have to, right? We have to, in a sense, mobilize. We have to inspire people and say, you have to fight this law. That's very, very important. If we give in to that sense of tiredness, it can't be the way forward. That's why you have to communicate that undying will to say, we'll fight this law. And that's very, very important, you know.
Actually, I'm feeling very tired. I'm like very exhausted. I don't have any energy, any strength anymore to go ahead, stand in the protest again and again and again. There is life going on, one thing we managed to take. It's not, and everything is connected. It's also not like, everything is not, gender is not connected with education or something else and something else and something else. But I do have one idea where I'm like seriously urging all the non-BJP states to oppose the law.
Yeah,
and
that was that. Yeah.
Oppose the law because we have a policy.
Yep.
We already have a policy. Is there a way to negotiate that and say that I will not use this law in my state? If something like that can happen?
The only problem is the three major states are going to elections.
Election.
West Bengal, Kerala and Tamil Nadu.
Yeah.
After the elections, I'm sure they will take a stand and the Congress should be pushed to take a stand. Like at the News Minute, we had a discussion on Monday and I was saying that we can't just write articles and nobody's going to read a lot of these articles, right? So we are now putting out these small 3-minute Insta videos because that is what a lot of young people connect to. So we have from the community, lots of people just opposing the bill. And as a media organization, whatever we can do, right, to just encapsule, because I feel like people want everything in capsules now, encapsule, tell people what is wrong with the bill, reject it. Because in our lifetime, I mean, I don't think this we should allow for.
I agree.
Yeah.
Now, I want to go back to this point of energy since all real guys are thinking on one side, I'm on the other side on this point.
No, I have energy. I just feel like, can I use it for other things?
I want to go back because I came back. My energy is not my energy alone. I came out from the protest. That's the difference between me and you guys, right?
Yeah.
And the protest had precisely what it described, a range of younger people who said passionately saying that this bill we cannot accept. So I think that's the energy one needs to build on. So I think more, again, my point is this, right? A lot of the time, energy comes from a collective process.
Yeah.
The more you are in your own isolated silos, the more you feel depressed, the more you feel vulnerable. The more you're a part of a group, the more the energy really comes in. So I think we have to really build that sense of saying that, this law we have to fight. That's the energy we have to really build. Going back to energy.
Yeah. And no, you should have a lot of energy. All of us should have.
No, I think all of us also will. It's just that we go through it in cycles. But
like why now like that, No, but I'm saying from the farm laws, what we also know is that physical protest is also something, I mean, it can't be in silos. And I hope that, somebody's going to cut this portion of South Central and say that Danya is instigating people to protest. Yes, of course.
Yeah, the
We
protest
should
is
come on the roads and protest. Absolutely no doubt.
no, but
about
also this is a red herring, right? If you think when we say right wing, if they'll only go out after religious minorities or certain, they'll go after everybody who's in any way not a part of the boxes that you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So this is a cautionary tale that way.
Okay, so thank you, Arvind. Okay, so after that very serious discussion, we first thought we will do some political subject today, but then Pooja and me decided that after that heavy first discussion, we should have something lighter in the second section. I don't know whether it's going to become any lighter because we have joining us with Rumi, Shivani Kawa, our reporter from Bengaluru, and from Kochi, Sukanya Shaji is joining us. Hi, Sukanya.
Hey, hi. Happy to be back.
Okay, so what we're going to discuss is this song, which has now been removed from YouTube and all other platforms.
Just the Hindi version.
Just the Hindi
Yes.
version. It's from this movie called KD Devil. And the song in Hindi is called
Sarke Chunaria.
Sarke Chunar.
only that song has been removed because of vulgar lyrics. A lot of people have opposed it saying vulgar lyrics. So when we started discussing this in office, our WhatsApp group just burst with people and their opinions about why are people opposing this only because it's a female gaze, should there be item song itself, etc., etc. So we thought, why not bring that discussion to South Central, and you all can then pitch in later to us. Shivani, tell us, what is the controversy about?
So the Kannada movie KD the Devil. Now Kannada movies also have this trend of going pan India, so they are releasing it in 5 other languages. And the song was released with like nice pomp and song launch in Bengaluru. Nora Fatehi had come, and Prem, they had an entire press conference. The song in Kannada is called Sarse Ninna Saraga Sarse, which means adjust your pallu. So
Doesn't say adjust. It pretty much says pull down.
pull down, yeah. So the song released on Saturday, and once all the versions of the songs were out, the Hindi version is the one that got a lot of criticism from the people, because the literal translation refers to as like inserted, don't let any drop of it come out, things like that. As much as the Kannada version also has similar wordings, the people that I spoke to said Kannada version is more poetic. It's concealed in sorts of way. So after it went viral, there was a lot of criticism. A singer like Arman Malik, he also said like, what am I hearing? What kind of song is this? And then a lawyer went to the censor board and he complained about the vulgar lyrics in the song. And
This movie has not got the censor certificate yet, right? I mean, that is only eventually it will come.
eventually, so the song is the advocate has gone and complained, and after that, a lot of other people, including Kangana Ranaut, came and said like how vulgar Bollywood is, and the censor board needs to take like critical action against this particular song.
But
So
poor
after-
Bollywood, it's a Kannada movie.
I mean, it's the Hindi song that got the criticism, right? Like,
But the Kannada guy wrote it.
yes, so that's the trick, because the Hindi translation, the man who has been credited with the Hindi translation, he came out and said that he did not write the song. He put the blame entirely on the director, Prem, saying that it was Prem who wrote the song and he was asked to translate it, and which is exactly what the lyricist has done. He has verbatim translated it.
Okay, Shivani, now we'll go to the real matter. What is your opinion?
On the song,
No, generally on this whole thing.
I mean, as a Kannadiga, I want to say that these kind of songs we've had it. It's like such a Prem song to have, because director Prem always has like in all his movies, he will bring in an outsider, almost always a light-skinned woman to dance on these kind of songs, and he will only write the lyrics to it. So it's a well-known thing. He's brought in Sunny Leon, he's brought Malika Sherawat, he's brought Yana Gupta, that was like Bin Laden and Mawa. There was a song like that in Kannada, and Shivraj Kumar was starring in that. So it's a very Prem-like song.
But the
So-
lyrics also are
yes,
like this?
lyrics also. Exactly, right? So this time, the only reason why this has gone to an extent where they're calling in for a ban or change of lyrics is because this has been taken out of context, is what they're saying, because the language or the context, the poetical context that is there in Kannada has not been translated into Hindi.
Is it poetic, Rumi, in Kannada?
100 It's very raw. It's not poetic as such. And but this is not new. You've had like where artists like Bijayashree and all sing Kabbina Jalle Kachiko, Bantu Kachiko Kachiko and all that. Then how different is this?
Okay, are we translating? Are we translating for our audiences? No. Okay, Pooja.
I wouldn't. No, I think this one has gone a little further. I agree that it is not at all new, right from Ravichandran's times. And when we were kids, we grew up singing those songs. And Shivani and I were talking about this before the show, that, I mean, it's so much a part of our childhood. But once
Which
we realized
song is that,
so
Pooja?
many of them, Ravichandran songs are all, and the way
mean
the
Kashinath.
Kashinath is some other level, but his songs were not as popular. Jaggesh and Kashinath songs were not as popular as Ravichandran songs, right? We still sing, and all of them are stalking, sexual harassment, molestation, even on, if you look at the videos. But the songs are so catchy.
So you're
Right.
saying you're just surprised by the outrage because this is something that's been going on.
No, outrage is first time.
Outrage is first time, and also I feel the outrage this time is like it's a smaller fish, right? Like Bollywood has been doing this for ages. We know from the time of like 1940s is when the item number started. And since then, it has been a very easy formula to go after. So Bollywood has been doing, we've had so many problematic songs. Even Telugu industry has been doing, like Pan India, Pushpa 2. There was a little bit of outrage. And again, that went into a very different realm where people were just, outright being classist, saying it's Bhojpuri style of dancing. That is what we have resorted to now. Bollywood has resorted to. But this is the first time where people are taking offense of the lyrics that is there. And I feel like, again, your outrage is fine, but you're not objecting to the whole visual aspect of it, right? Which has been going on for a while now. And even Kannada lyrics, I mean, I have just listed out the songs which are as problematic as this one, which have been ongoing for years right now. So this selective outrage, I feel, because sandalwood is a smaller fish and you're just attacking it because it's a Kannada song. If it was a Hindi song, probably it wouldn't have been the same
No,
outrage.
I mean, actually what caught everyone's attention is the Hindi one. Then they realized that it is a translation of a Kannada song. But for me, the silver lining in all of this is maybe it's about time now people start paying more attention to what's happening in the Kannada industry, the kind of lyrics, not just the lyrics, the kind of movies. Look at barring say Mala Shri, who was also kind of cast in a very masculine kind of way, we haven't seen any woman actor get even like a little bit of respect on screen, right? You're either an emotional support or you're this abla nari, or else you're a object of very dirty sexual desire, not even done in a nice way. Songs are like that, lyrics are like that, movies are like that. And these are the movies that have gone national. So-called pan-India Kannada movies, KGF, all of them are masculine. So
Okay, I'm just the uncle in the show who has not seen any of these movies, but I have a doubt. Like you, Sukanya, I'll come to you. From what I understand, you have a problem that, okay, why is it getting attacked? Is it because it's Kannada? And also you feel that the gaze has been like this for a long time. But shouldn't the problem be with the item song itself, the genre, Sukanya?
Yeah. So first thing, I just want to brag a little. I am a Malayali. I come from Malayalam cinema, where we make the country is looking up to us. So yeah, we don't have this perpetual problem of item song.
Really? We don't
I'm
have...
sorry, your actor goes to Bollywood and does item number.
No. Let me qualify that. But this gaze problem, this has always been there. Like even from the time of black and white cinemas, I think Danya, if you might have seen when you were a kid, there were these cabaret dances. You remember in songs in Malayalam films with Nasir and Prem Nasir, and there'll be one cabaret dancer and one disco type song where the dancer is just there for the performance and she's just there to dance, and she's probably the villain's side chick or something like that to embellish the villain's whatever. Cruelty or whatever, she's just there as a prop and she's dancing and she's this evil person. So all that has been there, but this, like you rightly said, the outrage just cannot be about one song or about one piece of lyric. It has to be about how we look at something as an item. Like there can't be an item song. It has to be a performance. It has to be there's an artist, there is a song, there's a lyric. It is an art, there is a performance. All of that is happening. So in all this, I think the problem with gaze is also about who has house control and whose gaze is it and what is that performance qualifying. So in that sense, that's how we come to this whole male gaze problem where the woman is performing, yes, but she's almost always performing to a male audience. She's almost always there. Like if you look at the visual language of most of these famous item songs, there is one woman, she's standing in the center. There are all these men who are gathered against her. They're hooting, howling, rejoicing, whatever. Everyone is just looking at her and she's performing for that audience. And the gaze is, it is for that audience's consumption, which is for that male mob's consumption. The body is objectified, the moves are for that, the camera pans on everything that is titillating and all of that. So I think the conversation definitely has to be about, what is an item number and how can you call a person an item? Like what does that qualify? I'm not even going into the erotic aesthetics of it at this point, but I'm just saying, how's that okay?
No, erotic I think is still fine. If it was erotic, I think people would have fewer objections. The problem is how vulgar it is. There's a difference between something being erotic and vulgar, I think. In this case, that is clearly blood.
But you were saying that people did not have problem.
One second. I just don't understand one thing. So what are we calling vulgar? Because this addressing the male gaze or fulfilling the needs of male gaze has been historically been happening. Where have we changed it? Why are we today suddenly talking about it? Because we have never changed. Not one song was there. I think there are exceptions of a maximum of not even 10 songs, which is for gaze of anybody else other than cis male. So why are we even saying that? Is it because of a sexual act that suddenly we are becoming very cautious because it is said in a very
Raw way.
raw manner that addresses the street language, or comes in a street language. My question is not about, I think I don't know, I differ from a lot of feminists when it comes to these questions, but the way it is termed, yes, when you said item number, item song, item dancer, all these things, item, sometimes what does it mean is a question. But isn't this at least a way of sexuality study for a lot of... So what if children come to know? As if they're going to go and have sex tomorrow morning by listening to these songs. I don't understand these things. These double standards, I don't understand. You're always... And this entire thing is so heteronormative. You're bound to see it everywhere. You're bound to understand it. It's easy to understand for anybody, children or whom, no matter what. How is it offensive for children? Please tell me. I don't understand. If they don't learn it this way, are you going to do does India allow for sexuality education?
But
But
I
they
don't
don't
think you're learning
understand. Yeah,
anything
they're
from
not-
watching these songs.
They're not understanding
differ
that.
there.
Exactly. Then why are we doing such a halabala? It's because, like Shivani said, I think it is attacking the smaller, not so creative film industry.
No, but I want to ask one more thing, Shivani, and I'll come to Sukanya also. Was this outrage also because I know you guys were discussing, I'm an illiterate on this, as I'm keeping on repeating, but you guys were discussing that this outrage also because this is the lyrics written where the female is the one who is doing all the
So
urges.
this is another formula, right? Because we've seen that after Samantha came with Ooh Antava and they said this is a satirical take on item numbers. So most often in the item numbers, it is the woman who's singing. Like Sheila Ki Jawani, Sheila is saying that she's too sexy for you. Munni Badnaam Hui, Munni is saying that she's Badnaam Hui. Or a lot of these Kannada songs, like Say Sama is asking, Say Sama, like she's also asking you to enter the door and everything. So in this case, the woman is saying, but again, the lyricist is a man. The person who's writing it is a man, and he is the one who's benefiting out of it. Even though they're saying they're like empowering women, or they're like giving a platform for a woman to express her sexuality and everything. But at the end of the day, like do we have lyricist who's actually writing it? Like, is it a woman behind that? No. I actually went on to make a couple of calls to just find have any of the female lyricists written any of these item songs? And no.
No, but my problem here is this. How do people understand female gaze? They think it's the exact opposite of male gaze, where women are objectifying men. Right? Many people have gone on to explain that it's not just that. It is about autonomy. It is about giving, the importance to what female desire is. Just like feminism isn't hating men, hating on
So what
men.
I'm asking is this song a problem also because it is about female desire openly?
But
because
it
there have been a
isn't
lot of
about-
songs about men's desires. Is
No,
it?
no. Actually, a lot of item numbers are talking about women's
Exactly.
desire.
Oh, okay, fine.
But on
I
your
should pay
point,
attention. These guys actually told me, do you know the song called Dreamum Wakeupum? And I had to
yeah,
go
we might
back and
watch
watch it. And then I realized, oh shit, this is what the song
Because
is all about.
in the Dreamum Wakeupum sequence, Prithviraj is just a prop.
Yeah.
And Rani is doing the dancing, and it's also like Rani is a
Trusting
very
him.
sexual woman who is like yearning for this man. Yearning is also not like she wants this man, right?
Desiring, properly
She's desiring
desiring.
for this man. So it was refreshing to watch for me because also it was not a skinny woman who was like dancing,
Yeah.
right? Rani did not have to lose weight to get this do this performance or whatever. And there's this like 6-pack Prithviraj, just a prop, just standing, and this Rani is just like. No, I was thinking of that song and I lost track of my thoughts. 1 second.
it can do that to you. Yes.
No, sorry. So
we're talking about the female. You're asking if this is a problem because it's the woman expressing her desire. I agree with Shivani. I don't think it's that. A lot of item songs have that. Maybe it's the brazenness. I'm not able to comprehend if it's also just the brazenness, because of late there have been so many songs that have that whole thing. And from the South, I feel this whole, like Shivani said, this whole need created by the Bahubali franchise for everyone to go pan India, for everyone to release in 5 languages, for it to get national attention. I feel all these songs have had, even Pushpa for that matter, I think it's one of the movies, the songs that I've watched. The choreography and everything, it's almost not even performance, it's acrobatics at some level, and it's very sexually suggestive and all of that, where you feel, I don't know, I really felt suffocated. I felt like my joints were hurting. Like, I'm someone who likes dance. I'm someone who really enjoys these songs and all of that. But then it is quite distressing to watch that way. So I feel it also comes from this need to appeal to this large audience. And these large audience films have these formulas of one song, one item dance. They will bring some heroine, like Shivani said, she'll be asked to lose weight. And then there'll be this whole PR about how she got into that size to fit into this item song. So all out and out, there is that objectification, right, from placing that person. And also, how are these women placed in these songs is also important. I think one Malayalam example that I can talk about is there was Dulquer Salman's King of Kotha. And King of Kotha had an item song, so to say, with a woman. I forgot her name. She's a very famous performer. So even there, the idea is to show this, this demarcation, like how Noora Fatehi was brought into the song. So there is this demarcation of how the woman that the hero desires is the homely kind, but the woman who's there for the item dance is the vamp. So there is this siren versus good woman dichotomy there also. So the placement of this, what is required of that actor to look a certain way, to dress a certain way, how it is shot, all of that is a problem. So and all item songs, irrespective of whether it is the woman speaking about her desire or the man speaking about his, have these similar visual languages. And that is mainly because it operates within very male patriarchal commercial context, where it is made for a largely male audience, where they know what sells, and it is sold on the basis of this hypersexuality and this virility that the male characters in the film try to sort of reinforce through these songs. So it is placed within that commercial ecosystem, and that is where that is the target and that is the vehicle. So I feel like it's pretty obvious that that's where it will go. But maybe it's the brazenness of the lyrics that has suddenly shocked somebody at this point with this song.
Imagine people are going to Google these lyrics because of us. Like, people who are unaware of this entire thing will also now go check out this song.
Yeah, but I can speak about Kannada particularly. I think the whole problem is this mass hero requirement, and all of these problems come under that umbrella.
Are they
where
like really
every
dancing
movie-
in real life like this? Why do they have it in movies?
No, I have a thing to tell you all that, even if you go back to the company theatre and if you look at the plays, that sociological plays that used to come out of company theatre, there were these kind of songs, these kind of dance in the name of item number, and then it would be written by men but sung and expressed, overly sexualized by women for the sake of men. It was there, so you can see it in Mujras, you can see it. So one of the type of music that was supposed to be seen as degenerated Hindustani music was also Thumris and Dadras, because at that point of time it was this kind of item numbers. And later, when an entire question came about the modesty of such women singers, the dignity of such women singers and things like that. But the format really hasn't changed. It is always for male. It is always and the question of what could be a female gaze has still not been explored. I'm like, even whether you take any film industry, whether it's any language, we still don't have women lyricists. We still don't have women lyricists expressing what a women's sexual desire could be, or how it would address a sexual song. Let's not buff ourselves. We all need that romantic sexual song. We all need that. But at the same time, we market certain things saying this is very sexual, this is decent sexual. Are we doing this? That's my
No, so
question.
two things. One is I agree with you that I was doing research for this and I realized that apparently it's in 2022 the first time a woman won the Best Lyricist Award. It was a Filmfare award. So there are so few of them. But again, the problem is that those women also are writing a male voice, though they're female lyricists. So the gaze is again important, though it's not enough to have. I can think of one or two good female writers, not necessarily lyricists. Tanuja Chandra usually does a very good job. Piku is one of her movies where even the male characters are written well. Her other movie, Kareeb Kareeb Single, even in that, they're not these masculine men. And if they are, it's beautiful to see how the father, who's a controlling father, is brought down by the daughter. But it's not a confrontation. So it's important even for men to have good women writers write male characters, right? That's one thing. And I slightly disagree with you about how this dream wake up is perhaps a little more feministic than this, because again, yes, she is talking about her own sexuality, but that is being done for men. It is catering to men, right? So it again defeats the purpose in a sense.
I mean, I agree with you because that's the same thing. Like we again come down to like how it's marketed. Like they think we're fools at the end of the day. They think, Antava, Samantha is satirically, like ironically, she's making fun of all the item numbers. And I think these songs keep coming. Dream Mama Wake Up, obviously. But I mean, I'm sure we've seen that Prithviraj interview on why he did this and how he was happy with reversal, he said, and everything. But I feel sometimes, like, I just want to take, I want to feel happy about, like, okay, there is some kind of representation happening here to see a woman who probably does not look like every other item number girl. I think I just want to take some comfort in knowing that, okay, a Rani can do this or Vidya Balan can do this.
I love the fact that you're trying to look for small victories, as all of us have to. But I think there is again a component of this, her being like the South,
all
curvy
that is
women
there,
from
yeah.
the South. That's why she was
Absolutely.
probably allowed to put on weight.
There was this, if you take out any Kannada song, the item songs for any normal Kannada song from 2000s till 2010, if it's a party song and all, suddenly you will see a Punjabi guy saying, hoi hoi. It was a trope, even the item numbers. So as much as like they do so much for it, the only thing we could do back to them was like bring in a Punjabi for saying hoi hoi. So that's
Reverse
how bad.
racism.
Yeah, that is all we can do.
No, I'm all for small victories because I feel that is all we ever get and that is all we are trying to bargain for, sadly. And sometimes I have these conversations with my friends. Sometimes if one of us is going through a breakup or one of us has this sudden bout of energy and we want to listen to some song which is written by a woman, which is sung by a woman and which has a female on screen to, sort of think of that in your mind and just go with the flow. We sometimes sit and wait. I have called my friend once and told her, don't we have any female-only chill songs or female-only breakup songs? Like, what do we listen to? Even in our personal moments, I'm saying this becomes a sort of, because your relatability is affected on a very personal level, on an emotional level, you're just making do with what is being written and what is being given to you. And in that mix, somehow, something a little better than the crass stuff that comes out and we're happy, like Shivani said. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, but guys, you can't be singing Dreamum, Wakeum, pumping up for your, mental strength and all that. I'm sorry, when I was a kid, I'm not a kid, I think when I was much older, there was one song.
Much older.
No, much older.
Huh.
I can't have in a kid because the actors are younger than me. There's this Malayalam song, Karupina. So I used to think that was at least one fun song where two women are dancing. So I used to dance to that very happily. Then that Kajol song, she comes with a towel. What is that song?
DDLJ, Mere Khwabon Mein Jo Aaye.
Yeah, I thought one of the only songs where a woman is like singing very happily about something. Yeah. I just want to say one thing. So I agree with your point that we are too, icky about certain things when it comes to cinema, how people talk. Even that Ranveer Allahabadia, when he said, cracked that
Parents
joke,
having sex, yeah.
even the Supreme Court was very icky about it. I agree that that's unnecessary. But I feel the problem with the item song is not just the gays and all. It's a very commercial thing. And I don't think even a kid watching, what are they thinking that thrusting is joy? I don't understand what
No, but
is
they're
the
not,
visual
they
language.
don't have the context. They're not
Yeah.
actually understanding it and they're mindlessly singing it, repeating it, right? That is where I think it becomes, and you're
Actually, you
picking
should
up
see
wrong
kids
things
now
about
who
sex.
dance, because I see a lot of kids dancing. It's quite scary. They imitate the exact expression
Yeah,
without
yeah.
any knowledge of what
Yeah.
it is, and they'll do these songs.
Without they're not learning sex the right way, probably. They just, again, it's what people argue porn does, right? Because it creates expectations that are so unrealistic.
What
Yeah.
I'm trying to say is that when you do not have proper sexuality education in India, this is what happens.
Correct. That complete agreement. Yeah.
Like you have no other doubt. Otherwise, what else can you expect?
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that commercial cinema, in that sense, has not even introspected on gaze itself. Like male gaze, female gaze is also putting it in a very heteronormative binary space. There are different kinds of gazes, different kinds of expressions. And I think this may be a reason why we find a lot more women working in independent film spaces as filmmakers and technicians, in documentary spaces and other spaces, because they're out of this mainstream commercial ecosystem where they get some space to go explore what it's like. Like, for example, now everyone's talking about all we imagine as light, obviously. So there is some space. I'm not going into the aesthetics of the film or the objective agreement or disagreement, whatever that is, but at least there is some space for a woman to just sit, look at herself, think to herself. There are those scenes where there are those intimate moments that establish a woman's internal world and things like that. But I see the reason why a lot more women are seen in independent filmmaking may also be because it is difficult to explore these identities and gaze and everything and make it commercially viable just because it's not allowed to.
Yeah, I think the only way this can be remedied is to have more women in every possible field. Now there are few women. They are trying to exist in a man's world, behaving like that. Saroj Khan had said many years ago, the choreographer, that item songs are very important because they're like achar to food, pickle to food. Because then you kind of absorb what you see around you and try to imitate that. The Mala Shri example that I gave. So I think we need to have more filmmakers,
Not just
producers.
women, all gender minorities.
Yeah,
Women, of
of
course,
course, yeah.
is a first step, I guess. Yeah. Last thought, Shivani.
So I just want to say, like, Kannada cinema, we need more women, obviously. But again, like, the whole conversation around gender is missing in Kannada cinema. Like, the only time we have spoken about gender was when the Hema Committee report came out and the Women's Commission asked Film Chamber to have a posh committee. And when that happened, on the first day when I went to the discussion that was happening, the filmmakers, the producers didn't even know the difference between POXO and posh. And they were afraid that they were going to get POXO. Sorry, I'm laughing at it, but it was hilarious. Like, how can you not know as simple as that? So when the bar is such low and something like this happens, I think this is a lesson for a lot of Kannada filmmakers, Kannada audience. Like, please, no more you can justify that, having regressive gender politics as like it is there for the mass appeal. Like in this case, Prem's wife, who's also an actor, Rakshita, she came out in support of her husband saying, you know what, it has been happening for so long. It has happening in Bollywood for so long. You did not call it out. You did not call it out, Dreamam Wake Up Bum and all of that. But I think this whataboutery and all of that, time has passed. Now we are living in 2026. I mean, that was one of the comments, like, why do we have such songs even today? Like, exactly, we should not have such songs. We should not have such lyrics. And now the filmmakers, they have changed the song with clean lyrics. But why do you want an item number, like, in the first place for this movie? Because Nora is not part of the movie as a actor, right? She's just doing the item number. So why do you want to forcibly follow this formula? Misogyny has been done and dusted. Like, it's the easiest thing you can bring in a movie. So let's be creative, because Kannada filmmakers, Kannada producers keep cribbing about why are the audience not coming? Why are they not watching our movies? And like all these famous veteran actors have said, you can't even spend 100 rupees for your actor. Like, bro,
Name
make
them.
some
Name
good
them, Shivani.
movies. It's Ravi Chandran. Ravi Chandran.
This is how Pooja will get into trouble.
I mean, just make some good movie instead of like coming up with this such nonsense for a lyrics.
Okay, Dreamam Wake Up. Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Sorry, but can I just also say, the money that you'd be given a Nora Fatehi and a Sanjay Dutt in this movie, can you please give that to other actors other than your hero, your technicians? You'll actually produce a decent, decent movie.
Okay, guys, thank you for the
I
outrage.
am
have
disturbed with how less you care about this issue. Let this go on record.
We'll do the recommendations quickly.
Yeah, so my first recommendation is this essay by Laura Mulvey, Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, talks about female gaze, etc., etc. Then there is an essay by Bell Hooks called Oppositional Gaze, which is a response to Laura Mulvey. So that's a great read too. I have a book to recommend, which I read recently. It is the memoir of the decade, I feel. It is Giselle Pellicot's A Hymn to Life. Very triggering, but very informative, very emotional, all of that. And I have a movie for everybody who wants to watch something that is somewhere close to having a female gaze. It is a 2019 French historical romantic drama called Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
We're talking about female gaze. So Mudhu Palani, the woman who had no reason for shame. This is a headline by, my God, Manu Pillai had written this for the Hindu a couple of years ago. Another Hindu recommendation, Radical Radhas of Bangalore Nagaratnama and Mudhu Palani. The reason I recommended these two, and I'd also suggest that you go and try and read, there are 508 poems that she'd written. Mudhu Palani was a courtesan in the Tanjavur court, and Bangalore Nagaratnama had written an essay on it. She translated it. That had been banned, and it is there in some parts of it. But do at least try to read Bangalore Nagaratnama's essay on Mudhu Palani and why the female gaze is important.
Okay, so I have a useless recommendation. I don't know if you should spend your money buying this book, but I'll still recommend it. It's Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. It's his memoir. It's actually quite fun. He used a hallucination drug and he was in a cage with a mountain lion for 2 hours. Quite a lot of quirky stuff like that. But his parents were quite abusive. So they had an abusive relationship, and he just like explains it in a way which had me thinking, what? Like how? So read it. Other recommendations, again, the Hindu, they have this very fantastic layout of the RSS and all its subsidiaries across the world, actually. So do check out that Hindu's RSS mapping. Shivani, what's yours?
I have two recommendations. One is the book called The Muslim Vanishes. It's Muslims vanish in India, and
It's a dystopian book.
Yes, and they take Qutub Minar with them. So it's an interesting book, and everything that the other side of the...
So I interviewed Saeed Naqvi after this book was released for an event at the BIC.
Yeah. So do read it just to understand what might happen, what you think should happen, and it might be totally different. The second one is a light read. If you are going through a reading slump, you should pick up a book by Uketsu. He's a Japanese writer. Nobody knows his identity. It's a series of book called Strange Series. It's a thriller mystery where you come up, like where he has given you building plans and you just have to solve it on your own or with the author. It's quite interesting because there are building plans and you can see what is happening, and probably you can get ahead of the author to solve it.
Maybe on the thematic of the discussion which we just had, a book which is by Ursula Le Guin called The Left Hand of Darkness. It's a science fiction novel, and it's about this king who transitioned in the course of his lifetime from being a man to being a woman back to being a man. So that fluidity of gender comes through very powerfully, and it's a fundamental critique of the idea of boxes, which you just spoke about.
I recommend Sunil Mohan, another trans man. His book, Your Stick Cannot Break My Strength. Your Stick Cannot Break My Strength. It is the first political memoir and trans man biography, which is autobiography, which he's a Malayali and lived in Bangalore for the last 20-25 years, and then done a lot of work on crisis intervention and writes, particularly critiques masculinity and writes a lot about the political action and masculinity and all that. It's quite an interesting book.
Okay, so that's it with the recommendations, and we come to an end of South Central. Thank you to my producer Bhuvan, production assistant Ajay, editor Jasim Ali, Yana, Sukanya Shaji, who's there on the show also today, but will also be doing all the back-end work. Thank you, Shivani, Rumi, and Pooja. Remember, we are starting our election coverage. Elections are due in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Assam, and Puducherry. We have a bunch of reporters, videographers, producers, and even Srinivasan Jain, the journalist, joining us in the coverage. So stay tuned to the News Minute and News Laundry, and write to us at southcentral@thenewsminute.com.